Welcome back to the Northridge 4x4 Do-It-Yourself Garage. Now today we're going to be talking about high-performance oil pans for your transmission from PPE. Yes, today we're talking about the high-performance transmission oil pans from PPE for your Wrangler JL and Gladiator JT. Now your first question might be, why do I need a high-performance transmission pan for my Jeep? Well, heat is the answer. If your Jeep sees hard-spirited use, whether it be off-roading, towing, or that stoplight to stoplight commuting, your transmission will see high loading and that'll create more heat. The stock stamped steel pan that comes with your Jeep, well, that's poor at heat dissipation. That high heat can break down your trans fluid and scorch your transmission clutches, shortening the service life of that transmission. Now PPE addresses these problems with thick, high-strength cast aluminum, which optimizes cooling of the transmission fluid faster than steel. And the cast outer fins, that increases surface area for even greater cooling effects. The PPE pan also allows an additional 1.5 quarts of oil to be added. Increased capacity means increased thermal stability, and that helps promote longer service life. The PPE pans also feature an 1/8" NPT temperature probe port, so you can add a trans temp gauge if that's your thing. Now our favorite is the billet stainless steel drain plug. It features a powerful neodymium magnet to catch any ferrous metallic debris. Now that drain plug is something the OE pan is missing, and being able to easily change the trans fluid, that's a big plus in our book, especially in an off-road vehicle. Now they also feature a replaceable filter just like the factory pan, and we do have them here at Northridge 4x4. These upgraded pans are available in 3 different finishes. They come in raw, brushed, and a factory black finish. Now to make it easier for the video, we're doing our swap up on the lift. But you can do this right at home, in your garage or your driveway, and if you've already lifted your Jeep, well, that's a bonus. It'll be even easier. Now things are a little different depending on whether you have the 2-liter turbo, the 3.6 V6, or that 3.0 diesel. So let's get on with the install and show you how we did ours. We're going to start by removing the transmission crossmember. You have 3 bolts to remove, and they take an 18mm socket. Next, we're going to move on to the transmission pan bolts. We're using a T40 Torx bit to loosen the bolts. Now the trick here is to slowly loosen the bolts, dropping the pan down towards the rear. Once the fluid starts draining out the back, let it drain for a few minutes. Then we're going to remove the bolts at the rear and down the sides, allowing the back of the pan to drop down and drain the fluid into the oil catch pan. Now after the majority of the fluid is drained, pull the remaining bolts and pull the trans pan. And now we're ready to put the pan up, but we do have a problem with our Jeep. On the 2.0 Turbo 4 and that 3.0 diesel engine, the pan's going to go right up, bolt in place, and you're done. But on a 3.6 V6, we do have to break the bolts on each side for the exhaust, drop it down a little bit, get the pan in, and then the exhaust goes back in. So one little trick I like to do is throw a little anti-seize on the threaded ends of the bolts before I remove them. That way it'll pull that anti-seize up into the threads and help clean them out. Now we do want to take a rag and you want to wipe down the rails, that mating surface of your transmission, make sure it's nice and clean. And we want to start 2 of the transmission pan bolts. And that's just to hold the pan. And then you're going to slide it up and then push that in to make sure that the filter seats into the transmission valve body. Now we can run those bolts all the way up. So we've got our pan up. Let's go ahead and get our exhaust into place. And we're actually touching the fins on the bottom of this pan. And PPE says we might need to take some out of the first 2 ribs just to get this to fit. Looks like we're gonna have to take a little bit more. I've got a Sharpie here, and we're just gonna grab a quick line. Then we're gonna start with 2 ribs, and we'll see if that works. If not, we'll take some more out. Now the exhaust clears, but we don't have a large enough gap. The engineers at PPE recommend 3/8 of an inch clearance between the crossover pipe and the pan. So we're gonna have to take out quite a bit more all the way across. We used a 40 grit sanding disc on a 4-inch hand grinder to take the aluminum ribs down to our pen marks. During the process, we did a couple refits just to make sure we had the clearances between the pan and the exhaust pipe just right. We then cleaned all the grinding dust out of the pan and did the final install using the factory transmission pan gasket and the supplied PPE hardware. And we tightened it down according to the star pattern in the instructions. If you have the 3/6 V6, reconnect the exhaust crossover pipe. Now this may seem like a lot of work, but we're getting a lot of benefits out of this PPE pan. And the work wasn't that bad. The 40 grit sanding wheel took that aluminum down pretty quick. And keep in mind that this is only an issue with the 3/6 V6, and that's because of that crossover exhaust pipe. The 2-liter turbo and the 3.0 diesel don't have the crossover exhaust pipe, so no problem at all. And PPE is working on a pan specifically designed for the V6, and it'll bolt right in, we won't have any problems, and you can keep that grinder in the toolbox. Now, it's time to add some transmission fluid. Now, just like we did for the engine oil, we're gonna be upgrading the transmission fluid with a high-performance, fully synthetic fluid from Redline. Now, Redline offers the widest selection of fully synthetic ATF on the market today. And in that range is the D6 ATF. And that meets both Jeep and ZF spec for the 850 RE auto transmissions in our Wrangler JL and Gladiator JTs. The D6 ATF offers improved thermal stability. It maintains proper viscosity levels and has lower volatility over other fluids. And that's all while meeting the required frictional characteristics spec'd by the manufacturer. Now this thermal stability, that's going to allow higher temp operation without varnishing of the valves and clutches. So it's just another upgrade in our transmission. Now one important note is that this Redline D6 ATF is fully mixable with the OE transmission fluid. And this is a must, because when we drain the oil pan, we only drained a portion of the transmission fluid in the transmission. The rest of the fluid is still up in the torque converter, the transmission body, and the cooling system. So anything we add must be 100% compatible with the remaining OE fluid, and the Redline D6 ATF is. Now to get on with our fill, the 8-speed transmissions are a little different. Unfortunately, they don't have that traditional dipstick. So that means our fill and check is a little bit different. We need to start out with an 8mm hex key and a ratchet. Now we want to look down the right-hand side of the transmission, and you'll see this big plug right here. That is our fill and check plug. So we're going to grab our hex key, and let's go ahead and loosen that plug up and pull that out. And here we can throw our tube in, and we're going to start putting fluid in. To make our filling easy, we picked up this little pump from the local auto parts store, and it doesn't quite fit the bottle perfect, but we made it work. Once the fluid starts running out of the fill hole, screw the plug back in. Now it's time to move up into the cab and start the engine. You're going to scroll the dash screen over until you're on the trans temp menu. Currently, we're at 73 degrees. Now to properly check the fluid level, we need to be between 86 and 122 degrees. So just run the engine until we reach that minimum 86 degrees. And once we hit 86, we're going to hold our foot on the brake and then shift into reverse and count to 5. Then we're going to shift into drive for another 5 seconds. Then over to manual and into second gear for another 5 seconds. Then we're going to go back up to neutral, bring the RPMs up to 2000 RPM, and hold for another 5 seconds. Finally, shift back to park and leave the engine running. Then we're going to climb back down under the Jeep, make sure our drain pan is still in position, and we're going to remove that fill plug. If fluid is coming out, let it drain until it is just a dribble and reinstall your plug. If no fluid is coming out, you'll need to start adding fluid until it starts to dribble out, then reinstall the plug. If at any time you have to add more than 1 quart of fluid, go back through the shift cycle again to make sure you get fluid throughout the transmission. So now that you have your new PPE transmission pan installed and it's filled with that Redline high performance ATF, you're ready for those tough tow days, those hot commute days, and those long days on the trail. Now for links to where you can buy a PPE transmission pan and that Redline high performance ATF for your Jeep, well, hit that description box down below. And while you're down there, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to keep up to date with all the going on here at Northridge 4x4. Thanks for watching today. We'll see you again soon. Diesel doesn't have that exhaust prep and lowers the it does not lower the volatility. Now that may seem like a lot of work, but it really wasn't. Crossover pipe, so no problem at all. And I just hit my head